Okay guys, so the first thing I'm going to talk about before I get into my review is about the scandal chat that I've been hosting here on my channel. That is getting ready to become kind of a regular thing throughout the rest of this season. If you want to find out more information about the scandal chat, I'm going to throw the link up on the screen here. You can click that to go check out that video with all the deets in it. Okay. So it's time to talk about another episode of Scandal. Obviously kind of the big news from last night is that we get that Director Osborne is not the mole, or technically I should say was not the mole, since he's dead now. And we also get that Jake is somehow involved in this. I mean, like, the last 5 minutes was definitely very kind of shocking. We meet this new character that's played by this fantastic actor, Joe Morton, who used to be on one of my favorite shows on the Sci-Fi Network, Eureka. He played Henry, and I just love that show, so I am excited to see him in Scandal Land, although he's not playing a good guy, it doesn't look like, so I don't know how I feel about that, but he shows up with Jake, and they do this whole, like, clandestine meeting on a bench in Washington. Just makes me want to go, like, walk around the parks in Washington and look for, like, spies, like, doing spy things. Anyway, the two of them do have this kind of, like, secret meeting at night, and it's not looking so good for Jake, basically. Backtracking a little bit, yeah, Director Osborne is dead, so after he's kind of outed as the mole, it looks like he's committed suicide in his car. But at the end of the meeting, when Jake is having his like little clandestine meeting with this new stranger, basically the conversation is, Osborne's dead, you took care of that. And so we kind of get that Jake killed him and tried to make it look like a suicide. Now this reminds me, you guys, of the Boom Goes the Dynamite episode. Remember when, at the beginning when Jake and Olivia are supposed to meet at the French restaurant, but then she's late, and when she shows up, he's like, no, we're leaving because this place is stuffy. And they end up like drinking wine in front of the like Lincoln Monument or something. And they're talking, and she asks him about what albatross is. And he tells her that it's like this legend within the intelligence community about this intelligence officer who was convicted of selling secrets, who swore that he was innocent, and what does he end up doing? He ends up pulling up, you know, in his car to work, parking in his spot, and blowing his brains out. So I thought it was kind of interesting that Jake chose to kind of do the same thing to Director Osborne, you know, who was convicted of being a mole, said he was innocent, but all of the evidence pointed the other way, and you know, now he commits suicide in his car. So I'm hoping eventually Olivia puts 2 and 2 together. And let's talk about Olivia for a moment, you guys, because I think throughout this episode we get that she's in a place where she realizes that she's kind of off her game. Because we all know that, you know, Olivia Pope would be able to spot Jake from a mile away. I mean, we totally get that. So I think what we're supposed to be getting, you know, from the writers is that Olivia's off her game, you know, that she's thrown off by everything that's going on with Fitz, and she doesn't trust her own judgment, and that's why we have allowed this snake into the garden, basically. So let's talk about the Jake and Olivia scene at the end of the episode, you guys. Let's just go ahead and talk about that first. We're gonna talk about all the good stuff. This is like eating dessert before you eat your meal. Something that I used to love to do when I was a kid, and still love to do really, if I was being honest. So, you know, Jake and Olivia are supposed to go on a date, and at one point we even see her getting ready for a date, and she's on the phone with Cyrus, and Cyrus is calling because he wants to come over to do popcorn and wine girl night, but Olivia's like, I can't, I've got an appointment, and he's like, you've got a date, and so she's getting ready, and she tells him, like, there's this guy, but I don't really know him, like, I haven't really figured him out yet, you know, there's just something about him, I can't quite put my finger on it. So that's our first hint, you know, from Olivia, that she knows that something's not right. Of course, by the time Jake gets there, she's in her, like, jammies, and he comes in, and she's like, look, I tried to call you, because you get at the last minute she's gonna cancel. And he's like, I didn't answer because I knew what you were gonna try to do, and they have this conversation, right? But you get that Jake has this insight into Olivia because of the cameras, you know, because he's kind of been watching / stalking her. And honestly, you guys, let's talk about it for a moment, because Jake is crazy, is what we've learned in this episode, basically. But I will say that, you know, like, if I didn't know that Jake was crazy, I would have totally fallen for this whole speech he gave her in the kiss. I mean, I would have totally fallen for that, right? Minus the fact that we know that the reason he knows all of these things about her is because of the cameras. He tells her all these things that he likes about her, like when she answers the phone, the first thing she says is what? He likes that she thinks that wine is a food group, and that she wears white a lot, and that she likes to fix other people's lives, and it's like all of those things are Olivia Pope. And Olivia basically tells him, like, look, I can't go out with you because I'm still not over the person that I was with before you. And I still think about him, I worry about him, you know, like I was just on the phone with someone who mentioned him, and I can't get him out of my mind. And, you know, Jake kind of really confronts her and is like, you don't want to go because you're afraid, you know, he says to her. And I thought that was really interesting and true, obviously. I mean, it's very true. By the end, though, you know, he like does the whole close your eyes thing and steps up to her and kisses her and then says in the kind of like sexy voice, like, are you thinking about him now? Are you still thinking about him now? And she says, no. And then he walks away. You know, Jake does the whole leave him wanting more type of thing. And I'm telling you, like I said, if I didn't know that Jake was crazy and that there were cameras and he was stalking her, I would totally be into that. I would totally have fallen for that scene, you guys. The other fantastic scene in this episode, you guys, was Mellie Grant. Let's talk about that scene, right? So throughout this episode, we get that Fitz's older kids, the teenagers, are supposed to be coming to visit for the weekend from school. So Karen and Jerry are supposed to come visit, and all the time you get that Mellie is up to something, like she's trying to disrupt the visit, and I'm thinking like, what is this woman doing? Because, you know, evil Mellie, you always expect evil from Mellie. So Mellie basically goes behind Fitz's back and changes his schedule with his secretary. Fitz finds out and he is furious, just like, why would you cancel my weekend with the kids? I was looking forward to it. And you really immediately kind of take his side because we know that Mellie is evil, right? But it turns out that Mellie is right in this instance, because at the last second she tells him, like, look, they didn't want to come. Like, she had been trying to avoid saying that to him, but it was like she was finally just going to kind of tell him the truth. So she tells him, they didn't want to come, they don't like seeing you because you are not you anymore. So they called me and begged me to fix it so they didn't have to come. And so then Mellie just proceeds to read him. Right, you guys? And I'm actually really surprised that it's Mellie, that Mellie's the one to finally kind of go toe-to-toe with Fitz and kind of be like, what are you doing? You need to get your shit together, basically, is what she tells him. She tells him, look, the kids don't want to come because they can smell the scotch on you. You're lubricated most of the time, which is true, as he's got a drink in his hand while she's talking to him. You're mean to them. They're scared of you. And you are becoming your father, which for Fitz would be the worst thing for him to hear, because we know how much Fitz hated his dad. So for someone to say to you, you are Big Jerry, you are your father. And you know, Mellie makes that point to him, like, you know what it was like to grow up there, so you just think about what you're doing to your kids. And I mean, it was seriously like true and awful, and his face was just like he knew it, you know, like you're hearing the truth about yourself. Someone's finally standing up to you, and you know that they're right, you know. And she told him, like, we all tiptoe around you trying to get on your good side, but you don't have a good side anymore. Now, the best bit about this whole speech was the bit about Olivia, right? And I mean, I seriously laughed out loud when she said it. But Mellie tells him, like, you know, this isn't about defiance. You know, if we, like, let's be real here. This is really about the fact about your precious Olivia. You finding out that your precious Olivia, who you put up on this pedestal, is a real person like the rest of us. And that she could use you like the rest of us. Now, I don't necessarily think that's true, you guys. I mean, but I think that's Mellie kind of digging in when she can. Because I don't think, you know, Olivia made the choice to do defiance because she was trying to use Fitz for power. Although I think that that's part of what Fitz thinks and part of what makes him feel betrayed, for sure. But yeah, the best part was when Mellie says to him, like, you found out that your precious Olivia doesn't have the, like, secrets of the universe tucked between her magical thighs. I was just like, you go, Mellie. Like, it was hilarious to me, you guys, as she said that. But she was so right about everything, and about the fact that it's not really about defiance. I think it is somewhat, and it's about what he had to do because of that, and none of them know that. But also, most of it is about Olivia and about that betrayal. I think also, though, we can't discount the fact that, you know, Fitz killed somebody. It doesn't matter, you know, that Verna was on the edge of death's door. He killed her. And so I think doing something like that, too, changes you. And so, you know, Fitz is gonna have to come face to face with the fact that he's a different person. So it was a great scene. Now the case of the week at Pope & Associates was all about Hollis Doyle and his daughter getting kidnapped. And it was an interesting case, though it was a little predictable because I kind of guessed it in the end. I figured that she was lying. Hollis didn't believe that his daughter had been kidnapped because it turns out that she's kind of like, she was a drug addict and all this stuff and running with a bad crowd and a crappy boyfriend. And so, you know, he thought that it was all like a hoax until they send him her ear in a box and then video of this child's ear cut off. And so that's when he's just like, okay, let's send the money. They're asking for like $20 million. In the end, what we find out, she gets free. They send the $20 million. In the end, we find out that he was right and that his daughter had staged the whole thing. She'd done it all herself. Like, she cut her own ear off. And in the end, it's like her dad offers her the choice, you know, like, because once they figure out what she's done, the mom is like, I want you to come home. I want to fix whatever's wrong with us. I want to fix it. Her dad even offers her the money. So it's like money or family. There's this big choice that she gets to make. You can go with your mother. We can start new, a fresh start. Or I'll just give you the money if you want it that badly. And so she chooses the money. She takes the $20 million and she leaves. So it was sad. Let's talk about Cyrus for a second, because Cyrus is doing some research on Captain Jake Ballard. You know, he's having Charlie look into him. So Charlie, at one point in the episode, comes to Cyrus, gives him an envelope full of stuff. So I'll be interested to find out what was in there. And obviously he learned about his connection with Fitz, but I wonder if there's more, you know, that he's going to finally be the one to realize that, you know, that he's messing with Olivia. Because next week, it doesn't look good for Olivia. It looks like she's in some danger, so I guess we'll have to see. The other thing about Cyrus is he finally kind of has it out with Fitz. I loved how he kept calling him, like, his other husband in this episode. Cyrus always has great lines. He had some really great lines in this episode. I just snorted. Anyway, so I loved that scene though with him and Fitz where he like basically tells Fitz like, you need to get over it. So he goes to Fitz and he's basically like, look, I know when you were in the military back in the day, you did things. Like, you did things to protect your country that you're proud of. And then Cyrus basically tells him like, look, I've done things too. I did things, like, meaning defiance, and I'm proud of those things. Like, basically, you need to, like, let me out of the cold. So, and I feel like in this speech, you know, when Cyrus does his whole thing with Fitz, Cyrus is really kind of standing behind what he did, and at the same time, I think Fitz is finally kind of ready to kind of let him back in. And so, the two of them sit down, and I feel like that's over. Like, the whole, like, shunning of Cyrus. I think, you know, he's kind of back in the inner circle with Fitz, which is probably a good thing for Fitz. The fact that Fitz has managed to, like, run the country while he was drinking and doing all the other crazy stuff that he's been doing is really kind of spectacular. So I can't imagine what he could do as president if he gets it together. Really quickly, too, let's talk about David Rosen in this episode. He finds somebody breaking into his apartment one night, Jake, basically, and ends up at Olivia's, and throughout the episode it was like he was a spectator, really. There were several times during the episode where he would just be like, why are you not calling the police? Call the FBI, let them deal with this. And I loved it when Huck was just basically like ran down the percentages and just told them basically like, the chances of finding her alive drop by 50% if we do that. If someone I love got kidnapped, I would call us. And I love that. I love the confidence that they have in themselves and in what they do. I mean, they all were kind of like, we're really good at what we do. And Abby even says that to him at one point, like, we're better than the FBI at this. So it was just kind of like, yeah, Pope and Associates. And so I felt like it was a good episode. Some of it I felt like was setting us up for the eventual payoff about the whole mole thing, because I think that's going to be bigger than we realize. I'd say the last kind of 5 minutes is what really shocked me. I was just seriously kind of like, I was not expecting that. Okay, oh my gosh. So I'm excited to see where we're going from here. So that's it for me today, you guys. As always, thanks so much for watching, and I will see you guys again soon. Bye.